Most budgets don't fail because people overspend. They fail because they're missing categories. A lot of people create budgets that work only in a perfect month. A month where nothing breaks, nothing changes, no one needs help, and life behaves exactly as expected. But that doesn't reflect reality. People budget for rent and groceries, but they forget that life doesn't repeat itself every month. Unfortunately, cars break, inflation is a thing, you have birthday parties to attend to, illness occurs, and your employer might reduce your working hours. A budget isn't about restriction, as a lot of people think. It's about deciding in advance what your money is allowed to do when real life happens. A good budget doesn't require perfection. It absorbs reality without collapsing. And instead of listing dozens of tiny categories that are impossible to manage, we're going to group money by function. If your budget covers these 6 functions, it has good chances of surviving this hard life. The first and most obvious category is survival expenses. These are the non-negotiables, the things we wish were free but aren't, the costs that keep life functioning at the most basic level. Housing, utilities, basic food, essential transportation, minimum insurance. These are the expenses that don't care about motivation, discipline, or timing. They show up no matter what. And the mistake people often make here isn't budgeting too much, it's assuming this category is the entire budget. Survival expenses are the foundation, not the whole structure. When people treat survival costs as the full plan, everything else gets handled reactively. Emergencies become crises, and irregular costs turn into debt. A good budget starts by clearly identifying what absolutely must be paid for life to keep running. Not what's ideal, not what looks good on paper, but what's actually required. This category isn't flexible, and that's okay. The mistake is pretending everything else can somehow fit around it without being planned for. The second category is stability and protection, and this is often where most budgets quietly fail. This category exists to absorb shocks before they become emergencies. Emergency funds, cash buffers, basic insurance costs, sinking funds for predictable disruptions. This category doesn't feel productive, so people underfund it, or just skip it entirely to be honest, and then they wonder why one unexpected expense ruins everything. Don't get me wrong, stability money doesn't make life more exciting. It makes life less fragile. It's what keeps a broken car from becoming a debt spiral. It's what turns a medical bill into an inconvenience instead of a crisis. Most people don't struggle financially because they spend too much on fun. They struggle because they don't have enough protection when something goes wrong. A budget without this category isn't a budget. It's a gamble. Stability money doesn't stop bad things from happening. It stops bad things from taking over. Every budget also needs a clear category for obligations and commitments that come from past decisions. Debt payments, student loans, credit cards, child support, legal obligations, contracts you can't easily exit. These expenses exist whether you like them or not. And pretending they're temporary or optional just creates frustration. This category isn't about judgment, it's about honesty. These payments reduce flexibility, and that matters. When people don't clearly separate obligations from other expenses, they overestimate how much room they have. And when something goes wrong, the pressure doesn't disappear. It shifts, often onto debt. A healthy budget doesn't shame past decisions. It acknowledges them clearly so present decisions can be realistic. This category is heavy for a lot of people, and that's exactly why it needs to be visible instead of buried. Now, the future. This category is about long-term growth and future stability. Retirement contributions, long-term savings, skill development, investments, anything that makes future life less fragile. A lot of people treat this category as optional, something they'll get to once things are better. But future costs don't disappear just because they are delayed. Ignoring this category creates future emergencies. The goal here isn't perfection or maxing everything out. It's consistency. Even small contributions matter if they're sustained. This category exists so future you doesn't become the emergency current you has to deal with later. Growth doesn't need to be aggressive. It needs to be intentional. A budget that only handles today eventually collapses under tomorrow. Now, one of the biggest reasons budgets don't last is because they ignore enjoyment. People build budgets that look responsible but feel miserable. No fun, no breathing room, no enjoyment. And then they break. Lifestyle and enjoyment aren't optional add-ons, they're structural. Eating out occasionally, entertainment, hobbies, small pleasures. These things keep budgets livable. When enjoyment isn't planned for, it doesn't disappear. It sneaks in through guilt spending, impulse purchases, or emotional blowups. And then people blame themselves instead of the structure. A budget that doesn't include enjoyment is a short-term experiment, not a long-term system. Planning for enjoyment doesn't mean overspending. It means deciding intentionally what enjoyment is allowed to look like so it doesn't sabotage everything else. Flexibility and irregular expenses. This is the category most people don't have at all. This is where life actually happens. Car maintenance, gifts, travel, clothing replacement, medical copays, fees, annual bills, seasonal expenses. You know, things that aren't monthly but are guaranteed to show up eventually. When this category is missing, people think their budget is working until it suddenly isn't. Irregular expenses get treated like emergencies even though they're predictable, and because they weren't planned for, they get handled with debt. This category smooths out reality. It turns surprises into expectations. Even a small amount here changes how stable a budget feels. This is the difference between a budget that looks good on paper and one that survives actual life problems. A good budget isn't balanced, it's layered. Each category supports the others. Survival expenses keep life running. Stability and protection absorb shocks. Obligations define constraints. Future growth builds long-term security. Lifestyle keeps the system livable. Flexibility handles real life. When one category is missing, pressure doesn't disappear. It usually moves to debt, stress, or even burnout. Protection supports stability. Stability allows growth. Growth reduces future pressure, and enjoyment keeps the whole system sustainable. The goal of a budget isn't to control every dollar. It's to make sure money flows where it's needed before panic decides for you. When these categories exist, emergencies become setbacks instead of collapses. When they don't, even small problems feel overwhelming. If this video helped you see budgeting differently, click on one of the videos on your screen right now. They go deeper into how to build financial systems that survive real life, not just perfect months. I'll see you in the next one.